Welcome, campers, to Campfire Curmudgeon. My name is Nick, and with me is my co-host, Heidi.
Hi, guys.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
I was talking to our listeners. They can email us and let me know.
They can't hear us.
Oh, they can't now.
They can't talk back.
That's the problem. It's a one-way
the
communication.
problem.
It's more of a conversation, right?
I mean, they can call us. They can leave the voicemail. If that's what you want them to do right now, if you're asking to call and tell us how
Call
their
in
day
live
is,
and leave a voicemail.
about how your day is.
You'll get the notification, and you'll be like, "Hey, Nick, somebody left a voicemail. We have to get online and
I'm just
record."
like, it's for you.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Hey, moron, this is how technology works.
This is for you.
All right, so today we are talking about
Creepy kids.
and their preternatural ability to kind of be in touch with things that adults aren't. Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think kids are so often the subject of like horror movies, or are they? Is it just they're younger in life, they're closer to the unknown?
I think we kind of talked about this briefly, I feel like, in one of our episodes. What I had said was that I feel like when you're a kid, you're encouraged and allowed to imagine things, you're allowed to be creative, you're allowed to play. The older you get, the more that's, like, discouraged, and you're kind of, like, taught to focus on, like, what's happening right now, physical, real world
Well,
things.
I don't know. I'm a fraud specialist in an office job. They encourage a lot of play.
Yeah. Well,
Run free with your imagination.
I feel like, though, most of us, like,
Yeah.
the older you get in school, the less playtime you have, the more core math, reading, science, less sit in imagination
They
time.
make you choose a specialty, and
Well,
you're
I feel
like, I want to imagine about ghosts today, and tomorrow it'll be like a magical football team made of wolves.
Wow. You were that kid, huh?
I was all over the place.
But, like, it gets to a point where, like, your kid has an imaginary friend, you're like, this is fine, but then they get to a certain age where you're like, okay, maybe he needs therapy. That's how it is. It's like, unfortunately, kids is like, oh, you're still having an imagination? I'm concerned. So that kind of gets, like, you learn that if you want to...
Right, do we need to see the pediatrician to get a
you,
referral to a specialist?
You start learning at a young age that to fit into society, you have to do certain things. So that imagination, that play is discouraged.
Imagine being a man and being told to stifle every emotion that you have. Not cool.
I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I generally don't do what I'm told.
I know.
Wouldn't change.
Yes. It's like, bottle it up, you're Irish, bottle it up. Like,
drink it away.
Just, okay, now snap. Is it a really bad moment to snap? Okay, snap.
So what he's saying is, if you see anything about Nicholas Jones in the news, you can all go,
no,
we saw this coming.
I'm well adjusted and I'm bratty, so...
Yeah, I can attest to that.
Yeah.
I have to co-host with you.
No, but
I'm not saying that what I think the kids are doing necessarily is making things up.
Right.
But I feel like it's that same realm of, like, that's not real. Focus on this.
And sometimes they land on something that's just like, ooh, you hit a little close to home in some type of, like, uncanny valley, creepy aspect, right?
What I wonder is, like, that part of the brain that is really open to play and imagination, is that the same part of the brain that's more open to these kinds of supernatural, paranormal experiences, and, like, the older you get and the more you're taught to, like, shut that part of the brain off, the less likely you are to actually see or hear things, which, I mean, maybe why I've had experiences. I don't think I ever shut that off. I still play. I'll still collecting toys and stuff.
Toys. I think
collectible dolls.
I think when it comes,
figurines.
so here's the way I kind of visualize open-mindedness.
All right.
It's the iris of the eye. It's the pupil that lets light in. Basically, the light is just everything that's coming into your eye. The pupil of your eye and your iris contracts and basically says, nope, that's the sun. We want to make your pupils as small as possible, or at night they get really big, like cat's eyes. And so I think that's kind of
my eyes could do that.
Right. Like that's a kind of open-mindedness, the way I think about it. And basically, it's all the same kind of deluge or fountain of input and information that you grow up in, and basically you learn to kind of close your eye off, man. Your mind's eye off to, like, some really radical, like...
Are you being facetious?
No,
right
no, not at all. I mean, some of it's pretty far out.
I can kick you under the table still.
Yeah, it's a long table.
Well, I think I got a long way. I'll reach somehow.
Okay. All right. So...
I feel like the other part of it, too, is if a kid keeps saying, like, I see that thing over there. Look what I see. I see, a ghost, a person, whatever. And you keep telling them, like, that's not real. There's nothing there. You're not seeing anything. If this kid is like, I'm seeing this, eventually they're going to be like, all right, whatever I'm seeing isn't real. And it's almost like if you ignore that and you learn, kind of like what you're saying, do you learn to close that eye? Do you learn to start ignoring those things? And then maybe you do hear or see something, but you've been repeatedly told that it's nothing. So you're just like, oh, it was just the house settling, or, oh, it was just, just my eyes playing tricks on me.
Yeah. I don't, it's like one of those things where it's like, is the kid gaslighting me? Does he have an actual, like, is he just trolling to see what an adult will do if he just, is he being contrarian? Because sometimes, kids learn that at a young age to just be like, no, yes, no, yes.
But I feel like, too, also, kids are usually, like, frightened by stuff if they realize that their parent is frightened by something.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like until you reach a certain age, you don't do, like, scare my parents tricks, because, like, if you're a little kid, you're like, what's that, and your parent freaks out, then you freak out, and you're like, oh god, what is it, so I don't know, I think really young kids, it's either imagination or they really are seeing something. I don't think they're necessarily trying to be manipulative. Maybe as they get older, sure.
Could be. I think you're right, the scaring parents with the false thing, it does happen at a later age.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I did the Elmer's glue on the hand peeling skin thing to my mom, who was just like a freshly graduated like nurse. So she's like, oh shit, and what is this? And she's like, oh man, your skin's just doing that? And I'm like, yeah. Like, I'm peeling it more and more off my palm. And she's like, well, we might have to call Dr. Grush. She was very nonchalant, because I'm guessing she was probably in a rotation where she was doing, like, ICU.
Yeah, she's like, the things I've seen.
Yeah, like, you don't know how much blood we mopped up last night.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, oh. And then I was like, she was unfazed by it, and I go, it's glue. I couldn't lie. It was just like, I don't want you to actually get on the phone and call people. It's glue. It's Elmer's.
I do that with makeup. I do, like, black eyes and bruises and stuff, and my mom usually knew, because most of, like, the eyeshadows and stuff I had as a kid were sparkly, so she'd be like, that's one sparkly black eye.
Yeah.
She's like, that's really good, but next time you should use something without sparkle in it.
That shiner is literally shiny.
Yeah. She's like, I'd be like, Mom, look, I fell and hit myself. She'd go, yeah, next time. It looks really good. You did a good job. Next time, though, you might want to borrow some of my stuff that doesn't have glitter in it. I'd be like, ah. She always knew. That was how I tried to scare my mom. She did say, though, I guess when I was a kid, I had kind of one of those creepy kid experiences where she would hear me, like, talking, and when she'd come in my room to check on me, and I was younger then, too, because this was before my little brother was born, and he was born when I was, like, 2 years old, so she would come in to check on me, and she would ask me, she'd be like, who are you talking to? And I'd say, no one, Mommy. And as soon as she left, I would burst into laughter. And she never figured out if I was just, like, screwing with her. Like, it freaked her out so bad. But I don't know, I was really young, so... I don't remember. But what we were going to talk about today, we thought we'd do something a little bit different today. And both Nicholas and I are going to actually read some stories. These are some of those, like, creepiest things your child has ever said to you stories. So I'll have the sources.
It's like Bill Cosby's the funniest, or what the kids say, the craziest things, except it's less creepy because there's 100% less Cosby.
So less creepy, but I'll have the sources of these on our website if you want to read all of them. We've just picked a few of our favorites. Nick, you want to start?
Yeah, I will. And I don't have kids, so when I'm talking about these are submitted by parents to other articles, and the sources for this are going to be on the show notes. Combination of a couple websites, but we'll definitely do that because we did not write these. We did not ask for these submissions. We just found them. So just kind of collating through the web to find the weirdest things that kids had said to their parents.
When we were looking up, like, do kids see spirits, like things about that.
Yeah.
These kept coming up so much, and I got just stuck reading them. I was like, these are so good. So I thought, this is kind of fun. Let's just share these fun stories.
All right. When my daughter was 3, she woke up one morning looking rough. I asked if she slept okay, and she said, no, Pawpaw Mike kept me up all night pinching my toes. My dad, her Pawpaw Mike, passed away 8 years before she was born, and that's how he used to wake my brother and I up when we were little.
So that's a cute story. It's like kind
Is
of
it
creepy.
though?
What do you mean? I feel like that's not super creepy because it's like your dad and that's how he used to wake you up. So it's like cute if your kid is experiencing that. It's not creepy.
Well, I think it also could be like you probably have done the same thing to your kids that your parents did to you in cute ways.
Maybe.
Like just out of subconscious, like the first time you're parenting, like, okay, I remember when when I was little, my dad used to wake us up and he'd be like, he'd say the same things every morning, like, you time to get some breakfast.
My dad would
bright-eyed,
yell really
like
loud.
bright-eyed.
Come yell it.
See, my dad would he would be really cute and very adorable, and he'd be like, he'd start singing like a toothbrushing song, and then he would be like, all right, you're getting up, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like he'd treat us like little squirrels, and then he'd turn on the TV, and we'd watch like WGN on TV and watch like Bozo the Clown, his morning show that he had for kids. I think it was on at like 7 a.m. in Chicago, and so that would be our morning ritual, and then it's like, well, if I had kids and I woke my kids up the same way, I'd probably be like, well, I learned from the best, so let's do the thing that Dad did to me. So I'm guessing that the parent that wrote this probably woke their kids up by poking their toes or squeezing their toes, like, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
Maybe, but I feel like you'd remember that. Like you'd remember, like, oh, maybe I did that a couple times, like
maybe.
I don't know. I'd remember if I woke people up the way my dad did, just screaming, reveille, reveille, up all hands, and then humming the trumpet part or whatever it was.
Is it that?
Oh, God. Yes, my brother and I would just be like, it would scare you so bad you'd, like, wake up, just like, stop. Just yelling. I don't know. I wonder, too, with stuff like that, is maybe even if you haven't woken your kids up like that, there is the potential that perhaps you've spoken about it, like, maybe the child heard, you speaking to a sibling about, oh, remember when Dad used to do this? So it's like, yeah.
It's within the realm of possibility that they talked about stuff that, your grandpa died 11 years ago.
But I don't discount that. Like, even if, okay,
and he was your
kid,
pawpaw, yeah. So
even if the kid knows that that's how you were waking up as a kid, it's just interesting that they're like, this is why I'm tired. And it's like, I mean, sure, you could say that that's imagination or something, but I don't say that, just because they knew it happened.
It's definitely like, it would be one of those like hair standing on end kind of feelings. Sure. What about the next one that's literally 2 sentences? It's 2 sentences.
2 sentences?
Yeah.
When my son was 3, he came and climbed into bed with us crying. I asked what was wrong. He said that the big fat man with a bloody hole in his head kept trying to open his window. Now that one is not cute.
The hole in his head.
Like a gunshot wound.
No,
or something.
yeah. What if it was just a bad piercing? We've seen that.
Oh.
We've all seen those.
Just like a really infected like septum or something.
Yeah.
Got no nose.
Or maybe it's like a guy with a really bad gauge, and it's so gross that it's only one ear.
I always wonder if stuff like that is maybe like a residual type haunting, which people refer to as kind of like an imprint of energy, almost like a recording.
Like here's a negative thought, and then your brain kind
of... Almost like, okay, like people think that certain materials and maybe even the fabric of time and space itself can record events, especially if the events are like traumatizing enough or have enough emotion, and it can get played back almost like a recording or a tape just pushing play.
Right.
So this kid could be seeing the same thing over and over again because it's almost just like that imprint.
Like a scratch on a record. Just
looping of that event to where someone was, shot or injured or something, so that you can, it's not necessarily a haunting, whatever image is popping up in his window can't interact with him in any way, but it's still super creepy.
Well, I say we take the Star Trek solution to that and subject it to a tachyon field.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let me grab my Transcorder. Give me a second.
Tricorder?
Yep. That's what I said.
You said transcorder.
Yeah, it's the more fabulous version.
Oh, is it? I'm not as big a Star Trek nerd as you.
I know, that's why it's extra bad that I said that.
Yeah.
I'm like, stop looking at my Star Trek collectibles and judging me. Rude.
I can count them.
No, you can't.
No, I can't.
I downsized. I got rid of like half of what I owned.
Yeah.
You're like, oof, that's bad.
So, my then 4-year-old daughter came up to me, put her hands on my belly, and said, "Mommy, you have a baby in your belly." Come to find out 2 weeks later that I was 3 weeks pregnant. She also said it was a boy, parentheses, even though she really wanted a baby sister.
I like that you said the parentheses.
And close parentheses. And she was right. She also did something similar to 2 teachers at her daycare. They called her the baby whisperer.
That's really funny.
That's creepy.
I used to be able to guess the gender when I was a kid. I don't really ever try anymore. But I guess my great aunt Bonnie had this ability. She had never wrong. She could, if she saw a picture, video, or if she like saw you in person, she could tell you if you're having a boy or a girl. Was always right. And sometimes it was when you were barely pregnant. So, because like a lot of people say they can tell by like where your stomach, high or low, but she could tell when people were like very newly pregnant. And I used to do that too when I was a kid. Everybody would ask her and ask me, and if we agreed, they were like, "Oh, it's right."
Can you put that on a resume, like as under skills?
You know, I've been tempted
like
to put
jogging
some weird stuff.
and sex guessing. What is that? It's
Yeah.
exactly what it sounds like.
You know, that might get you the wrong kind of recruiters calling you.
Also, it's not too cool in 2017 to be like, "I'm a gender guesser." Like, wait, what? And they're like, "Well, guess the gender."
What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say?
It's kind of transphobic.
And people still have like those gender reveal parties and all that jazz.
I know. But that's usually, I think the reason that's still accepted, even though we're being a more trans-inclusive society, which is a very good thing, I think part of it is that, like, well, we know, we're just guessing at we're guessing at the gender the child's going to be born with.
So weird.
But the thing is,
I don't get a lot of that.
You don't express
stuff.
that gender, like, the kid doesn't start expressing the gender until at least they can communicate and be like, "I don't feel like this."
Yeah. I don't know. Don't label things.
Right. I'm fine with not labeling things. Leave it all amorphous and weird. It's, like, we're like, I used to be the kind of person that's like, I have to know whether it's A or B, and it's like, well, it's fluid, and we're like,
it's more exciting.
Uh-huh.
Like whenever people are like, "I don't know if that's a boy or a girl," I'm like, "I don't know, I don't care, but I like their outfit." I'm just like, well, I'm gonna go ask them where they got those shoes. They're like, "Ask if it's a boy or a girl." I'm like, I don't care. Yeah. I just want to know where they got those shoes.
Yeah, I'm not I'm sorry, I'm not gonna date them. Sorry, stepped on a possible landmine there. But,
don't you usually?
Yeah,
we edit a lot of your landmines out.
I jump on them.
You're like, "Ooh, what's that?" And you go running towards it.
Gonna set it off. Gonna set it off.
Gonna do it. And then afterwards you're like, "There was an explosion. I don't know what happened."
Right.
And you're always so shocked by it.
I think I scrolled down
This
too far.
was putting Nick on the couch corner.
Yeah. Why do I do this? Do I have self-destructive tendencies?
Here's one. Let me see. I like this one. When my daughter was 4, I heard her singing a song that my mom always sang to me when I was young. I asked her where she learned it, and she told me that her grandma taught it to her. My mom had passed away 6 years before my daughter was born. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, it's, nature and nurture, and it's like how much is actually really stored in our genes, because you don't remember that you have the tendencies and even like little what's the word I'm thinking of, like mannerisms. Like people that are related have the same mannerisms and tendencies, and even the way they laugh, or things that are just like, wow, your genes are so close together that not only do your vocal cords, are they shaped kind of similarly, but also like when you laugh, you're like the physicality of it, extends to beyond just like muscle and tissue.
I think we kind of talked about that in our reincarnation episode, where it's like traits and things, and I had said that I have a theory that potentially memories can be passed down through genes the same way. So, even if that's all it is, that's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. But the fact, too, that this little girl said that her grandmother taught it to her,
Mm-hmm.
it's very interesting that it's like, well, if something was just like a memory that came down, you might not know where or how or who it was from. But the fact that she's saying her grandma taught it to her, that's very interesting. It's like, oh, did you see her? Like, maybe even
or
like
was it
she
just
dreamed
in
it,
you? Yeah.
or something like that. I think that's really, I like these stories. I think they're really cute.
I do too, and I think I remember, and if any of our listeners are out there and they Google this, and I get it wrong, but there was something about how the baby boomer generation of specifically the subset of Holocaust survivors.
Yes, we were talking about that a
Right,
little bit.
and they'd all gone through kind of shared trauma, and they all like dealt with this depression as a subset, and it was like, well, they didn't experience the Holocaust, but they definitely were children of parents who had been through that.
But I think with those kinds of memories, these kids didn't necessarily have enough memory to know like what was causing it. They would just be like, why am I so jumpy at certain things? Why do certain things really bother me? And it's more of like that gets passed on.
Yeah.
Not so much like they actually remember.
No. Yeah,
physical,
just the PTSD, the trauma of it. Yeah.
So I think that like memories, like bits and pieces, are what would go get transferred through. I think like a whole song, words, melody. I don't think something like that, like, even if it was just, like, maybe humming something, would be more, I would be more willing to think, okay, maybe that's somehow stored in, like, your memory and your genes somehow. But I think stuff like this I always find a little bit more compelling when it's, like, somehow a child knows something from a deceased family member that supposedly they were never taught or never heard from anybody else. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. My 5-year-old has stuck to the same story since he was 3. What's the common thread so far in the ages of these kids? It's 3 and 4, right?
It's right about the time before they get told, to focus on.
So the 5-year-old was once 3, and he's saying this for 2 years, and he doesn't change the story. I remember my last mom and dad died, and you found me. Remember, I was on the side of the road when you found me as a baby. I had a little sister before, but she's dead too.
So interesting.
And it's like, that story didn't begin with my adopted 5-year-old. That story was...
Yeah, it's almost like when we were talking
the
about...
repressed memory.
Like reincarnation, like past life experience. That's almost what that seems like. Because stuff like this, especially if he's saying that... If they're saying this child started saying this when he was 3, presumably he hasn't really been, watching things with this sort of a plot. He hasn't been exposed to this,
depending on bedtime stories, because
really
there are
does
some
depend,
kids' books that are just effed up. Like Roald Dahl, like his whole universe is messed up.
Like when I was growing up, my grandpa was a huge fan of like true crime stuff, which no surprise there since I am too.
And
I think, but that's what I attribute it to is from the time we were really little, he'd be like, "Oh, they don't understand," and I was like, "We understood a lot more than he thought," and he was always watching like some true crime or mystery type thing like that.
Yeah, that's one thing. It's like just being around children. Like, I'm pretty tight-lipped. I like, especially around my niece.
That's why kids make me nervous. I'm like, oh, I gotta censor really hard.
They pick up on everything. Like my niece is no dummy, and now she's in like 7th grade, and it's like I really have to censor. Because it's just like I remember being in that junior high, middle school age, and I picked up on everything that any adult said to me.
My sister was probably about 3 years old, and my dad was like running around the house looking for the keys to the car, and he was like yelling at everybody like, "Where are they? Where are they?" And my mom was like, "Maybe they're in my purse. Where's your purse?" And everyone was like yelling because my dad was like, "I need to find these keys." And my little sister kept trying to get his attention. She's like, "Dad, Daddy, Daddy, Dad, Daddy," and he's just, "What? And finally goes, "What?" And she goes, "Dad, maybe you should look in the damn closet." And everybody goes, "Oh!" And she just goes, "Uh-oh," and runs, because it was like, she had never said anything like that before, and all of a sudden, to my dad, hands on her hips, she was right, that's where my mom's purse with the keys was, she knew, and she just finally got fed up, and it's like that thing where my dad was like, who says this stuff around her? And it's like, she picks up on it. Like, you think that kids aren't listening, or you think you're being careful and not saying anything around them.
Right.
And my dad catches up to her. He's like, where'd you hear that? She goes, well, Mommy says it all the time. I know it's a bad word. And he was just like, ugh. Like a week later, my grandpa said, damn. And my sister goes, damn, from the other room. And my grandma's like, do you see what you just taught her? My brother goes, oh, no, she said that last week. She hears it from Mom. Throw her under the bus. It's like, even if you think you're censoring yourself with your kids.
Save, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was like, see, I'm good. Things kids pick up on, little sponges.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, you want me to read one now?
Yes, please.
Pretty please. When I was about 2 weeks pregnant, and I didn't even know it yet, my 3-year-old daughter came and patted my belly and said, Great Grandpa wants you to know there's a baby boy in there, and that you need to take good care of this one so you don't both have to go to heaven when he's born. She had no living great-grandparents, and I did end up being pregnant. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think that's kind of sad, though.
Why do you think that's sad?
3-year-old daughter doesn't have any living great-grandparents, like the parents' grandparents are gone.
Yeah.
That's kind of sad.
When I was a kid, I only ever knew one great-grandma, and I believe all of the other 3 great-grandparents I had were deceased before I was born, or shortly after, because my mom's grandma held me when I was very young. I think she died before I was a year old, though.
Yeah. There's a picture in my family of my niece, my brother, my mom, her mom, and my great-grandmother all in the same picture. Mm-hmm. And it was a really cool picture.
That is really cool.
Yeah. And then we did one with my niece, my dad, and or my niece, my brother, my dad, and his mom.
Aww.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I didn't really know a lot of my great-grandparents. A lot of my friends, when I was younger, they didn't even have grandparents alive.
Uh-huh.
So I don't think it's that unusual not to know your great-grandparents.
I think in a big family, when the certain family members, like certain generations, started having kids when they could have kids, and they stopped having kids when they couldn't,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty common.
Yeah. You mean big Catholic families?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got my mom, one of her aunts is only a few years older than her, and it's and
I always think that's funny.
And my dad has a nephew that he is 2 years older than, and my cousin Jeff is almost as old as my dad, and he's actually older than my dad's little sisters, I think. So it's like, hi nephew, hi aunt. I
had friends like that to where they were actually older than an aunt or an uncle.
Mm-hmm.
So it was so funny because they'd be like, yeah, I held my aunt, and everyone's like, what? They're like, oh yeah, she's 2. And it was so strange, and we were always like as a kid, that was so hard to wrap our heads around. We're like, what do you mean? You're lying. Because we didn't understand that could happen.
While changing my daughter in front of an open closet door, sentence fragment,
oh my God.
She kept looking around and laughing. I asked her what was so funny. She said, the man, to which I replied, what man?
You're doing voices now.
I am doing voices.
I love it.
So, what man? What man?
That's the mom.
What man? I'm trying to, trying to find my mom voice. I'm not very maternal.
Your mom voice?
Yeah. What man? She then pointed to the closet and said, the man with the snake neck.
Ooh.
I turned around and nothing was there. I'm afraid to look into the history of my house to see if anyone hung themselves in the closet. At least she wasn't scared.
Right. Well, that's the thing is
the man with the snake neck.
The snake neck.
Because it's oh yeah, I guess if a kid didn't know what a noose was.
Yeah. I think a lot of times kids aren't scared of some stuff that could be just terrifying until they learn to be taught that fear.
Right. No, there's some bad things that happen, and you're like, there are bad things that happen? Like what?
No,
you mean when you don't get sprinkles on ice cream?
Well, I think it's that thing where kids oh, and then he died, and kids will tell a story and you just stare at them because you're and you're not affected by that because they haven't reached that point where they fully comprehend everything. So sometimes they'll say this most horrifying stuff, and you're just oh.
Yeah, like my
phase you.
Like my goldfish. Like...
Yeah. You're like, that did not even phase you yet.
Yeah.
So I can see, like, that's why, too, I think maybe part of the reason kids see this kind of stuff is they're not afraid of it. Like, you know, have you ever had that thing where you're
they don't know enough to be afraid of it.
Have you ever had that thing where you're home alone and you're, like, really busy, like, maybe in your closet folding clothes or something, and you just hear something, you're like, if someone broke in, it is too late. So it's like that thing where you don't even want to turn around.
No, I'm heavily armed.
Okay, well, for some of us that can't Rambo it up in like 0.2 seconds.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like,
especially if I'm in the closet or folding clothes, it's like I'm very close to my...
I'm never in the closet.
Like, I'm very close to my weapons.
Now everybody knows how to break in and kill Nick. But you know what I mean? Like, if you have that moment where you're like, it's too late to do anything, like, if someone's got a gun on me, like, they're gonna shoot me.
Uh-huh.
Like, you have those moments you're like,
just
I'm
pure
just not gonna turn around.
Pure vulnerability,
but you know
what
I mean? Where you're like,
yes.
I'm not gonna turn around. Or, like, you hear a car screech and you're walking on the sidewalk and you don't bother to turn around because you're like, it's either gonna hit me or it's not. Like, it's too late. Like, sometimes I feel like, as adults, you hear that noise and you're just like, nope. You do that thing where you're like, nah, it's not worth it. You don't acknowledge it because you're just like, what's it gonna do?
Right.
It's too late at this point. So I think kids are more, like, open to that because they don't have that, like, fear response, that response of, like, learning to, like, block that out yet. So they're like, ooh, what's that?
Well, they haven't stacked consequences on top of consequences for, like, the worst case scenario, and they don't have to entertain the reality of that if that's happening. And so they're just like, yeah, and then he pulled out his bang-bang gun, and then he shot the other guy, and you're like, what? This should traumatize you. And you're like, no, it was funny. It was loud. I laughed.
It's like my cats. They like all sorts of loud, violent stuff. But I think they know. Mm-hmm. They comprehend. They just love the destruction.
All right. Do you want to go ahead and regale me with the last story that we have?
I hope it's a good one. Let's see what you saved me. My 3-year-old nephew was at my cottage. He asked me numerous times about the girl over there, while pointing at one of the back bedrooms. The place is small, and there is definitely nobody in there, so I just dismiss it as a really active imagination. He has a lot of imaginary friends. Then some friends are visiting, and they have a daughter around the same age. She has never met my nephew. Twice in the one day, she asked about the pretty girl, while pointing at the exact same room. Definitely caught me out, and I didn't know what to think. Then at Christmas, my family was over at my place, and my nephew points at a picture of my wife and asks if she's coming to visit us here, or does she just stay at the cottage. My wife died 10 years ago. Personally, I don't really believe in paranormal stuff, so it's probably just my logical brain putting together a bunch of kids' ramblings, but it definitely got my attention.
Aww.
That, to me, I think it's interesting that this person is just like, nah, it's probably nothing.
They have a place and a cottage, and it's the old man from Up.
Aww.
Ellie died.
Yeah.
And he's just like, who's the pretty lady? And he's like, what?
Well, I always find that really interesting. And again, that kind of goes back to, too, they're pointing to the same room.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one of those things where
there's a tear in the space-time continuum?
The imprint. Is that just like a residual haunting where for whatever reason her image is something that you can see for brief periods, it replays. You know, maybe something happened and she was really happy in that moment. She was trying on a pretty dress or something because they call her the pretty girl. But I always think that, you know, I just think it's so weird when people say, like, well, I don't really believe it. It's like, how do you not believe it? I don't know. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that, I don't know. It's one of those things where, like you said, kids take in everything. They're just information, the sponges, right?
Yeah.
And she'd probably seen the picture of the wife it probably wasn't the first time at the cottage. But then there's something about the room. And who knows if this widower was, like, keeping that room the way it was?
Yeah, but
for
at the
10
same time,
years?
like, these two kids supposedly hadn't met each other, known each other. The one was a daughter of friends. Maybe he's never, you know, he may have never met this little girl before. This is the first time she's interacting with him. She may not even know that he had a wife or anything.
Could be. Yeah, I think that's a sad story.
You curmudgeon. Could be.
I am a curmudgeon, but I'm a sentimental one.
So you'd be this guy. You'd be like, probably nothing. Probably just kids.
Yeah, just like, that's just kids.
Kids just say the darndest things.
She could start relaying a message to me from my beloved wife, and it'd be like, I go make a pizza roll. Like
No, you'd be like, I got the chills. It's nothing.
Here's some money. Go see a Star Wars. Yeah.
Go see a Star Wars? Is that what you just said?
It's from Arrested.
How old are you?
Yes. Yeah, so that's some kids saying some funny and weird, creepy things.
Some creepy kids. I don't know. I hope you enjoyed those stories. I think that they're fun at the very least.
Yeah. If you have any personal experience with this, or if you have I want you to pay really close attention in the near future to the 3 and 4-year-old children in your life.
Yeah.
If you have any
kids, nieces, nephews.
Yeah, don't prompt them, don't prime them, but just pay attention. And if they're creepy and weird, send us an email. I don't want them on the show, but you can tell us their story and we'll relay it.
You're like, I don't want that creepy kid in here.
No.
He's freaking out. He's like, what do they know about me?
Right.
They can read right through you. That's the thing about kids. You're like, oh. All right. Well, that was our creepy kids episode there. That was actually prompted. Dominica, one of our listeners, suggested that we do an episode about kids who see spirits. And while we were investigating that and doing a little research, these were some of the stories we came across. And so I just thought it'd be fun to actually share these stories with everyone. We'll probably get a little more in depth into this in a future episode. And like Nicholas said, if you guys do have any stories from kids in your life, or stories from when you were a kid, we might put those into a future episode, so definitely share those with us. And we are always open to suggestions of what you guys want to listen to, what you want us to talk about. Let us know. You can let us know on Facebook. That's Campfire Curmudgeon on Facebook. We're also on Instagram under the same thing. Mm-hmm. Where can they find us for email? campfirecurmudgeon@gmail.com, and on Twitter @CFCurmudge. You can always reach us on campfirecurmudgeon.com. There's a space there to put messages or send us emails as well.
All right. Well, until then, we want you to thank you for listening again. You can reach me on Twitter @NicholasEdwardJ. And until then, keep the campfire burning.
Bye, guys.
Bye.